Over the course of the first 8 lessons, we've learned all about the 6 chess pieces. We've learned all about check, checkmate and stalemate, and these things we will return to many times over the course of our lessons, but you know the very, very basics now. You know enough to play a game of chess and hopefully checkmate your opponent's king. In this lesson, lesson number 9, which again ties in very nicely with the CSC worksheets and the Kahoot problems, I presume you're doing all of these things together to make you a really strong chess player. We're going to look at king safety, and we're going to show you a way to get your king as safe as possible early in the game. You take a look at this position. Ignore what black's got at the moment. We're not too bothered about those. We're just breaking it down to the very, very basics so we can see exactly what this special move involves. We're going to show you a move called castling. Castling is a way to get your king really safe, and the sooner the better in a game of chess. Certainly by about move 10, you should have castled your king to safety. And now we're going to show you how to do that. Take a look at the white king on e1. Take a look at the white rook on h1. And there's a very special move here. It does two things we wouldn't normally see. First of all, the king moves more than one square for the only time in his life. And secondly, we're going to move 2 pieces at the same time. I know that sounds ridiculous. Sounds almost like a magic trick. But watch what happens. The king moves 2 squares. And then the rook jumps over. The king now is very safe behind this wall of pawns. They're going to protect him from the black pieces. And the rook has jumped from the corner to the other side of the king, where he can eventually have some fun, maybe even check in the opponent's king. Look at that one more time. The king moves 2 squares and the rook jumps over. When you castle on this side of the board, where the kings start, it's called castling kingside, sometimes called castling short. But we can actually castle on the queen side or castle long by doing the same sort of thing. The king moves 2 squares and the rook jumps over. There's a little bit more of a gap on this side, but the basic principle is exactly the same. You can see the king is very well protected by this wall of pawns, and the rook is no longer trapped in the corner. You can come out and have some fun. Sometimes we're not allowed to castle. Sometimes things have gone wrong and it's against the rules. We'll have a very quick look now at some of those ideas, and then you'll be an expert in castling, hopefully. Take a look at this position. The white rook has moved from h1 to g1, and one of the rules of castling is that you can't castle with pieces that have already moved. And it doesn't matter if we put that rook back on h1, we will not be able to castle on that side of the board anymore. But we can still castle on the queen side because the king has not moved and the rook has not moved. So 2 squares with the king and the rook jumps over. On a similar theme, if you've already moved your king in a game of chess, you can't just put him back to e1 and then castle. Unfortunately, you will not be able to castle in this game at all because your king has moved. Don't forget, you cannot castle with pieces that have already moved. You cannot castle if you are in check. You can see in this position, the black queen is checking the white king. We'd love to castle now to get the king safe, but we can't do it just yet. And one thing we don't want to do is move the king out of check. Because even if we put the king back on e1, we will not be able to castle. The best move here is to block the check with the knight. And then on the next move we can castle, because we've not moved our king and we've not moved our rook. Check is so deadly to a king. We can't castle if we're going to end up in check. You can see here there's a white pawn missing from g2, and that means that this rook is attacking all the way down that line. And if we were to castle now on the king side, the white king would immediately be in check, which is an illegal move. It's a move that's against the rules. You have to put it back and try again. Luckily for white, he can still castle on the queen side. And again, check is very, very deadly. Our king is so afraid of check, he's not even allowed to go through a check. The black queen looks like she's not doing very much over there on a6, but she's actually checking that square on f1. And the white king can't even go through that check to castle. Can't castle on the king side at all in this position, because he can't go through check, but he can still castle on the queen side. This is a complicated subject when you first encounter it, but if you watch this video again and keep up to date with the CSE worksheets and the Kahoot quizzes, you'll eventually become an expert on castling. Every strong chess player castles as quickly as possible in a game of chess, and the sooner you start doing that, the more games you will start to win, simply because your king will be very, very safe early in the game. If you castle and your opponent doesn't, you've got a large advantage. You can prove that in your own games by castling against your friends and against your family. This brings us to the end of our first 9 lessons. We've covered all the very, very basics of chess, and once you've mastered those skills, we'll be able to move on to more difficult work. So stay tuned, because we've got a lot more content still to come. Thank you very much for watching.